So interesting to see as part of the budget moves, the federal budget and the federal government allocating around about $1.6 billion in a brand new funding deal for the states and territories that require all preschoolers to hit new targets on getting kids ready for school. Now, at this stage, we're not sure what those targets will actually be, but this money, this new money, is dependent on those kids being suitably ready. It's generally understood that they'll be linked to things like the ability to hold a pencil, to sort different objects, or to tell a story. Now, on the face of it, it sounds pretty fair and logical, because we all want the kids to be well adjusted and equipped, and there obviously has to be some sort of formal instructing. But there are some in the early childhood sector who see red flags to this money and what it's tied to. Joining us this morning is PennyDakin, Chief Executive of the Australian Research Alliance for Children and Youth. Good morning, Penny.
Good morning, Liam.
What do you think about the idea of having these targets, Penny?
Look, Ben, I think there's a lot to like about what's come out in the budget. But as you say, there are definitely some red flags from where we're coming from. As you rightly point out, we all want the best start for our kids, that without a shadow of a doubt. But, what we know about those early years of life, early childhood development, is that there are some skills that kids need to develop, and they're things like executive function, social and emotional well-being, emotional regulation, and that's what the preschool years are about. It's about helping kids develop those softer skills. We often hear them referred to, and I've got some concerns about how we're going to measure that, and whether we're going to be pushed towards things that are just more easily measurable, like literacy and numeracy, which is not what we're looking for out of the preschool years.
It's a funny mix, though, isn't it? Because whenever we talk about this sort of debate, and mostly it's centred around how young or how old, kids are when they first get to the preschool scenario. We talk about play-based education and how good that is, but I think most parents would agree, wouldn't they, that some of these things they think should already be being done in early childhood education. I mean, if you go to preschool, you are going to learn sort of the basics, at least holding a pen and telling a story.
You absolutely are, but you're probably going to learn those things through play as opposed to formal instruction. You're going to learn how to tell a story because you're going to be playing with your friends and playing with the educators and learning how to do that as part of that play-based curriculum. You can do all sorts of learning when you don't think you're learning, and I think that's the problem with the term play-based learning is that, by and large, people do think it's just play, but the amount of things that we know those young brains are absorbing during that play is everything from storytelling to learning how to share, to learning how to control their emotions, to deal with conflict. I'm sure you've seen it, kids in the sandpit fighting over a truck. What a great place to learn how to give and to take and to compromise. And you'd agree that those are just fundamental skills that are absolutely necessary to get on in the world at school and beyond.
It feels to me like the federal government is making a push for this, and it's the reason they've tied this money to these targets. As I say again, we don't know exactly what the targets are, but it feels like they're sort of strengthening the edges up, Penny, because we've had chats with the Federal Education Minister, Alan Tudge, about this, and he keeps mentioning the Singaporean model, which does get kids into more structured learning at a much earlier age. This feels like this sort of path.
And I think that's my concern, is that we definitely are very supportive of efforts to strengthen and to grow early childhood education care in Australia, and we welcome any move towards making that more affordable and more accessible, and raising the quality of early childhood education and care. And I think if we can learn anything from the work out of Singapore, it's that the quality of early education and care really matters. And I think that there is certainly this work that's come out of the budget is looking to do I guess, just to put some strength or to strengthen that sector around the edges, potentially. I could agree with you there. But what it doesn't do is a couple of core things that we know, again, from the work in Singapore and other places internationally, is to actually really work with to improve the workforce, to improve quality, you actually have to be looking at the workforce. And that's where this current budget has actually completely been silent. There is nothing in the budget package to improve conditions for what is a very, very insecure workforce in the early childhood education and care space. So I agree. I think it's some good steps in the right direction, but by and large we're still tinkering around the edges. And as again you've said, the devil is going to be in the detail. We don't know what a lot of these budget measures are going to look like on the ground. We haven't had that consultation with the government. We're really hoping that they come out to the early childhood development sector and actually ask us our thoughts on those things, and hopefully then incorporate the voice of experts in figuring out what that looks like on the ground.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how it's rolled out. But on the other side of the coin, it can't all be play-based, can it? I mean, it can't all be sort of, toffee apples and lollipops. I mean, there's got to be, otherwise we just feed into the thing where people say, with justification, well, preschool has become a child minding service. It's just babysitting.
Look, I think, again, that goes to the misconception about play-based learning. It's not toffee apples and lollipop pops. Kids are learning fundamental life skills. I throw the term executive function around there, and I know it's a bit bureaucratic or scientific in its terminology, but those skills, we talk to them, we call them colloquially the airport control or air traffic control skills. They're the things that help us make complex decisions on the run. They're the things that help us think logically and sort out multiple pieces of information that come at us at one time. They're the things that allow us to prioritise, to develop judgment, to develop skills that allow us to interact in complex situations, as I've mentioned before, to deal with conflict, all of those type of things. And you've got to agree that I think, one of the things that we're seeing in society is that we've undervalued those skills. And when we're placing an emphasis on the preschool years, that's the time when kids, when their brains are forming and developing those skills. So everything that we can do during that period to help kids, to help families support their kids to develop these skills, it's got to be better for the kids, it's got to be better for the families, and ultimately I think it's going to be better for the workforce of the future and our whole society.
If it is more structured, if that's what the government wants with this money, what are you worried about most? I mean, are you worried that with a more sort of structured learning package that we could end up having some sort of testing regime as well? We could have widespread testing of preschoolers along those lines, the more formal sort of mathematics and literature and things.
Yeah, look, I'm concerned. I mean, I think it's fair to say in this country that the jury's still out on the NAPLAN testing arrangements. There are people who advocate strongly for it, and there are people who really don't like it. And it would be a shame to see us move into a sort of version of NAPLAN for 4-year-olds. And I'm not suggesting that's where the government have said they're going to go. But we just know that all of those skills that I've just talked about in my previous comments are very difficult to test and assess on a one-to-one basis. So I would be concerned about any testing regime that would be looking to try and measure those things and hold preschools accountable to reaching certain targets in relation to those. But we don't know, and we'll only know as the government gives out more details and as they go through their process of giving life to the measures that they've announced.
Yes. All right, Penny, thank you very much for explaining your position today. We appreciate your time.
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
PennyDakin, the Chief Executive of the Australian Research Alliance for Children and Youth. So the federal government dangling that one.